Every year, I review all the new iPhones, and I always end up choosing the Pro. But this year, for the very first time, I got stuck between two choices. And that is between the Air and the Pro. And here is how I finally decided which one to go for. Let's talk. Since the topic of today's video is the Air, let's get these iPhones out of the way. Dahil alam kong maganda silang tignan, makulay, but these won't be what we're talking about today. We all know that this iPhone Air is the biggest redesign to an iPhone since yung launch nila ng iPhone X nearly a decade ago. And as someone who constantly changes their smartphone, yung pagkakaroon ng access to a new form factor of an iPhone feels really good. Yes, totoo yan, and I'm actually quite surprised why not so many people, or at least reviewers, are talking about the iPhone Air, at least here in the Philippines. Sabihin ko sa inyo yung naging first impressions ko when I first unboxed my iPhone Air while I was in Hawaii. Alam ko namang sa halos lahat ng smartphones, wala na masyadong spark because again, konti lang kasi yung changes every iteration. Siguro the last time I felt very excited at talagang yung may spark was the launch of the Samsung Z Fold 7. Even the Xiaomi 17 Pro Max we previously talked about, or minsan with nothing phones since may mga unique vibe talaga yung smartphones nila. Pero itong bagong iPhone Air, alam nyo, ibang usapan. I feel like this is a new territory at least for Apple. Why? Because it's not every year that we get a thin and light phone from them. And yes, yan ang una-una mong mapapansin once you get your hands on this device. And not just that, it also gives that premium feel. Something that I would say I did not feel with the Pro and even with the base 17. I mean, those are also premium phones, but it felt the same, something like that. Specifically, Apple made the iPhone Air with grade 5 titanium, and it also has a ceramic shield 2 glass na up to 3 times mas scratch resistant. Actually, during the event and even those videos I've been seeing about its durability, the brand is very confident about how this device will last. Why? Because again, this is the only titanium device out of the iPhone 17 lineup. In terms of the color choices, I would say it's probably the most subtle color choices they've ever launched. Why? Because the sky blue, cloud white, and light gold all appear white to me. Hindi ko alam kung ako lang to, but I'm pretty sure to some of you guys, ganun din. Except of course, the black. I wanted the black. It looks like the sleekest option, but I went for the gold. I wanted to be unique because during the launch, everyone's raving about the sky blue. I love the sky blue, but ewan ko, parang gusto ko maging kakaiba, pero I ended up regretting it. I kind of disagree about those people who complain about the titanium frame. Masyado daw shiny. Again, having titanium frame is not really new. Ito na yung kaso noon pa sa 16, sa 15. Anyway, the way I'm using the iPhone Air the past few days is without a case, but with a pop socket. The phone is kind of too big for my hand. Again, size-wise, it's between the base 17 and the 17 Pro Max. So, I would say it is still a bit big for my hand. But since I want to maximize yung form factor niya, yung nipis niya, I would rather not use a case, but put a tempered glass and use a pop socket. By the way, in terms of weight, I love it. It's only 165 grams, so meaning it's 12 grams lighter than the iPhone 17. I mean, I love the iPhone 17, the color and the weight, but may mas gagaang pa pala dito. At ito yung na-realize ko at least sa akin or sa choice ko when it comes to my smartphone. Okay lang pala sa akin na malaki yung phone, basta magaang at manipis. Kaya rin pala gustong-gusto ko yung iPhone 13 mini and even the 12 mini before. It's not because it's small. It's because it's light. Okay, so now that I've said some of the things I love about the iPhone Air, let's talk about one thing that I didn't really like much, and that is the single speaker. Not even the single camera. Okay, pag-usapan natin yung single speaker na to. Using this phone for quite a while, syempre, we're using it, diba? So, kasama sa everyday ko yung pag-alarm. And I have to say, there are times na hindi ako nagising. Syempre, having one speaker really diminished the volume. So kung katulad nyo ako na heavy sleeper at kailangan yung ng malakas na alarm, you might wanna take note of that. Lalong-lalo na if you are coming from a Pro or Pro Max, kunwari 16, 17, 15 na dual speaker yan, you will notice the difference. However, after a month of using the Air, syempre I was able to adjust. And I would say it isn't really a deal breaker. I'm mostly also on my AirPods all the time anyway. So, kapag nasa gym or even I am outside tapos medyo maingay, I don't really use my speakers. Hopefully though, we get a better speaker setup sa mga susunod na generation. Crossing fingers because I want a second gen. Hopefully guys, hindi siya matulad sa Samsung Edge na nag-stop agad sa first gen. Ngayon, bakit ba tayo may camera plateau? If you can see right now sa camera natin, meron siyang parang pixel-like bump, di ba? Which is something we don't normally see from Apple. Ngayon lang to nila ginawa. And that is because Apple relocated most of its electronics and of course the single camera to a bar to make it very thin, measuring it at 5.64mm. So yes, kung susukatin natin siya dito, manipis talaga siya. Pero kung dito, syempre, iba na yon. But don't worry guys, kahit na yung components niya nasa camera plateau, hindi siya top-heavy. Balanse pa din. Which is also something I appreciate over time. And you might wanna take note lang, most of the overheating or yung pag-warm ng phone happens on the top part since nandun lahat ng component. And since nasa taas na part siya nagwa-warm, hindi ko masyadong nararamdaman on my everyday usage since laging nandito naman yung kamay ko or yung paghawak ko sa device. Now, let's talk battery. I'm sure sasabihin agad ng nakakarami, battery is the biggest compromise after getting this device. Hindi po. During the launch or nung Apple event, guys, di ba sinabi nga ni Apple that this will give an all-day battery life. That is actually true. But I was able to achieve that by using yung dedicated power bank ng iPhone Air. So ito yung battery pack na sinasabi ko. Binili ko siya together with the iPhone Air. And I have to say, I was able to extend the battery life of this phone using this. Now, if you find this a bit expensive, although it's a really nice power bank, of course, we have options. This is not sponsored, by the way, but I've been using this power bank together with my iPhone Air simultaneously kapag lobat na yung Apple power bank ko. And it's not just for the Air. You can even use it with the base iPhone 17 that looks like this. Manipis din siya, although it's not as thin as the one from Apple, but it works. By the way, this has 5,000 milliamp hour. I have to say, going from a Pro, 17 Pro, to an Air, I've felt the difference. So kung i-describe ko yung naging battery life ko with the Air, it is good, but it's not great. Siguro kung i-compare ko sa naging battery life experience ko sa base iPhone 17, it's at around 10% less. Siguro dahil light to medium user lang ako, and most of the time, nasa bahay lang ako, so I'm using Wi-Fi. And then when I'm outside, I rarely use data as well. I use my other devices as my hotspot. So I was still able to get through a whole day with a lot of screen time. So to me, battery life is acceptable. Hindi to naging issue para sa akin. Now, let's talk the single camera. And I'm sure this is kind of controversial to some. Why? Because not everyone's very willing to sacrifice the lack of ultra-wide lens. Not even telephoto. But the good news is, yung main camera ng Air is the same camera that can be found on the base iPhone 17. It's a 48 megapixels that has a 26mm focal length. And not just this, a 12 megapixels with 52mm telephoto quality. Yun yung 2x sa mismong camera app niya. Again guys, it's not a dedicated telephoto camera, but it can give telephoto quality. That is according to Apple, of course. But in terms of like our experience, it's a good zoom quality, especially for outdoors, but it's gonna leave you wanting for more kapag medyo low light na. Again, at least for me, yung naging output niya, hindi ako binigo. Same experience I had with the iPhone 17, except of course the lack of ultra-wide. Why? Because the main camera has a sensor shift OIS and dual face detection autofocus. And not just that, it is also fast. I'm not here to tell you guys na okay lang yan na isa lang yung camera niya, tanggapin nyo na lang. Pero syempre, depende pa rin to sa paggamit nyo ng phone. Like, my husband really loves using the Air as well. Wala siyang issue kung wala siyang ultra-wide. Wala rin problema sa kanya kung wala siyang telephoto lens. Ang mas importante sa kanya, I guess, is the form factor. Siguro dahil din kasi marami naman siyang cameras he can use if he wants more. And since madalas rin siyang magmaneho, he's always outside, he connects it via CarPlay. So, bihirang-bihira na hindi tumatagal sa kanya yung iPhone Air. Now, what needs attention is probably the selfie camera, which is also the same thing I've said from the previous iPhone 17 videos. Not only does it have a new square sensor, but it also captures 18 megapixels images. At first, it may sound like a gimmick, especially for those na hindi into taking selfies, but it has an actual really nice benefit to this design. So yes, even though wala siyang ultra-wide lens, but since it now has a wider focal length for taking selfies, which again is previously 23mm to now 20mm, at some point I was able to accept the fact na wala siyang ultra-wide. So what other camera features does this phone doesn't have compared sa mga Pro? One is cinematic video. Two, syempre, spatial video. Alam naman natin, it requires two lenses to do this. And third is log video recording. But gladly, yung dual capture, which is again being able to capture videos ng sabay with the rear and the front camera, meron ito. Anyway, we are down to the last part, which is my final thoughts. One, I really hope Apple won't cancel the iPhone Air. Although I've been noticing maganda naman yung sales at least compared sa other phones that launch a thin phone. So hopefully we get a second generation of the iPhone Air with a better battery, I would say, a dual camera setup, or just dual speakers. I feel like I'll be one of those people who will be very, very disappointed pag tinanggal nila or nag-stop sila with the first gen. But yeah, this phone with its form factor, seriously guys, for me, it changed my everyday experience. It's practical to use, comfortable sa kamay, at ang dami niyang pro-level features na na-retain. Again, with the combination of this phone, no case, but with screen protector of course, and with the pop socket, panalong-panalo. Ang ganda. I can still feel the thinness of the phone without the fear of losing the grip. Anyway, that's actually it for my iPhone Air review, or at least a month of experience. I really did enjoy this phone. Sa mga naka-iPhone Air dyan ngayon, let me know guys kung anong experience nyo, kung parehas ba sa akin, kung nag-enjoy din ba kayo. Again, it's your Tech Girl Mary, and see you in our next video. Bye!